What is up, and welcome back to the Unfiltered Trainer podcast. I am your host, Gina, aka Gina Marie Fit. And as always, y'all, it has been another wildly fulfilling week. So much has been going on. We officially opened Body Fit Training Tampa, the first location of many. It's super exciting to just see everything that you've been working for and our team's been working for. Like, we have been at this for months, and to finally see it come to fruition and see people in that studio, it's just such a nice transition. Although I am having a little bit of trouble with it because your girl does not know what work-life balance is. You guys know that I legit am a workaholic. I do best when I have routine and I am busy, and I'm not somebody that can function with a lot of downtime. And so last week I had some time off, and it was great for a couple hours. And then my brain was just thinking of all the things that I'm so used to doing so much for so long now, that the fact that I am done at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's it. And I have time now to work out. I've been spending time with friends. I legit just got home and I'm looking around my apartment. All of the dishes are done. The laundry's done. There's nothing in the dryer. There's nothing sitting in the dishwasher. This is real life now. And I don't know. It's so wild to me. And every time somebody says, congratulations, this is something you deserve, it just resonates with the fact that when you go through a really difficult time, like I did last year was just awful, and you come out on the other side of it, and people recognize your efforts, your resilience, and the fact that they recognize that you are just a generally good person who has the best intentions, questionable outcomes sometimes, but definitely the best intentions. What means the most to me out of all of this is that people recognize that I deserve this and that I have worked relentlessly my entire freaking life. And it's taken me to be 30 plus, as I like to say, to officially have work-life balance. And I don't know. It's wild, guys. I'm about to go to TBI rehab after I post this. I'm going to run some errands, and then we're filming the rest of a project we're working on. And it's just I don't have to stress. I don't have to feel rushed. I don't have to compromise my sleep or doing things I enjoy to make sure I get the things I need done. And it's just it's a wild time, but I'm super grateful. And with that, one of the things that I want to focus on for myself, and it has been a highly requested topic, is nutrition, meal prepping, and planning. And so today in this episode, I'm going to share with you my personal nutrition story. It's wild. And then we'll talk about the basics of macros, simple, clean eating. This does not have to be complicated. And when I am on my BS, as I like to say, what I normally do, and this is what I'm striving to do. And so part of my nutrition story for me came from a young age. I was always sick. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older that we found out that I had all of these food allergies, and not intolerances, allergies. And so my body can't break down several foods. And so we didn't know, until I got older. And so I've always had a restrictive nutrition plan because of my allergies. I've always had limitations, I should say. And then when I got to college, it was probably the time I became most aware of my body. And it's when I developed really bad tendencies and habits. And that's when I developed my really restrictive eating. And that's something that I carried with me through college and then after college. And so after I graduated in my young 20s, going into my second degree, I went from one degree to the other. I was in school for 6 years straight. When I did all of that, I continued that process long after I quit playing soccer. And what I would do is I would have my nutrition plan. I was eating 1,200 calories. It was bad. And then depending on if I veered away from that program, I would then go back to the gym. So I got up at 4:30 a.m., was at the gym at 5, put 2 hours in, went to work, and I work in physical therapy. So my job was already physical. And then depending on what I did or ate during that day, I would go back for another cardio session. And I literally was less than 120 pounds. I had abs, and people were celebrating the way I looked. Like, people thought I looked good. Reality, I was so unhealthy. And so when I became a traveling therapist, I have always loved sugar. If you know me, you know, like, your girl is never going to not eat something. But that's when my depression kind of took a turn. It was when I was 25 when my life kind of fell apart and I gained 30 pounds, and I literally was just like eating candy for dinner. Like, I did not give a shit anymore. I didn't care about anything. I would go to work, I would come home, I would grab snacks, and I'd go up to my room and watch Netflix in my dark room. I was so just truly in the thick of my mental health struggles. And I did that. I stopped going to the gym. I stopped going to yoga. I stopped walking in the park. I was living in Baltimore at the time, and I literally just gave up. And so it took a while for me to really turn myself around. I was living in Hagerstown, Maryland, because it was so random. And that's when I truly got involved in my health and fitness journey. There was like nothing in this small town. I started working out from home, and that is when I'll never forget the first photo I ever took. I completely meal planned. This is the first time in my life that I had fully meal prepped. I'm talking bagged everything after packaging it, after weighing everything, labeled everything. And y'all, I legit consistently worked out 5 to 6 days a week for 30 minutes a day. I followed my meal plan to a T, had balance, and I lost all the weight. And that's when I really started getting into fitness, because I didn't have to restrict myself. I didn't have to omit things I enjoyed. I just had to do it in a way that was more balanced. And that's kind of where the foundation for my coaching program came, because I feel like too often there's a lot of people pushing like macros and fitness. I feel like every other person on the internet is a health and fitness coach. And I put that in quotes because a lot of people can say they're one thing, but then they don't back it with science and knowledge. Anybody can be a trainer. Anybody can give macros. It doesn't mean they're the right macros. And it doesn't mean that the program has adhered to what the person needs the way it should. And so you really have to take your time in finding who's the right person that you're willing to work with, invest your money in, because you don't have to be certified to give macros. You can truly just, like, some gyms like let people train just because they have a history of training and they're not even certified. But you do want that baseline knowledge. You want that research. You want that good nutrition coursework done, because if you don't understand, a lot of people, when I get people's macros from other coaches or trainers, they're so low. And no wonder why people are not building muscle. No wonder why they're tired all the time. No wonder why their hormones are out of whack. It really is a fine line when you give somebody nutritional advice. And so something I took myself from was super restrictive to gaining 30 pounds to losing the weight, and then to building muscle and developing like a true like figure. It's when I embrace weightlifting and let go the idea of being bulky that I really got like good quality results. And that's what I built my business on after that. And so a lot of people have asked me about nutrition and what are the basics, how can you simplify nutrition when you're busy? And so we're going to talk about the basics and how I go about doing my meal prep and planning, being somebody that works so much. What people really first just need to understand is the basics. When you hear somebody talk about their macros, that just means macronutrients. Those are the primary building blocks of what your body needs for fuel for your energy production. So the three main components of macros are protein, carbohydrates, and fat. These are what makes up the majority of your calories and the energy we consume. When you're figuring out your protein and your carbs, there are 4 calories per 1 gram, and fat has 9 calories per 1 gram. And so if you're like eating like a chicken breast, 225 calories is going to have 45 grams of protein and 5 grams of fat. And something like a sweet potato is going to have, depending on the size, like 88, 90 calories with 20 grams of carbs and 2 grams of protein. you have to really be mindful when you're talking about macronutrients to not fear fat, especially women listening to this. You actually need a certain percentage of fat in your daily intake to make your organ systems functioning. And so macronutrients are that base foundation. They're building blocks for which you will build your programming around when it comes to nutrition. And there's a lot of foods out there that have 2 or 3 macronutrients in them. And that's why you really need that healthy balance when determining what your baseline nutrition should be. You have to really think about everything that you're going to intake and count for that so you really understand, because everything has a nutrient density and quality to it. To break down macros and make it really simple, there's no one complete list. There's so many lists of macros in it, but the big one, number one, you always hear people talk about is protein. And I use a disclaimer when I talk about increasing protein, because I had this experience with an online health and fitness coach who increased my protein too fast. And I explained to them hey, I have severe IBS-C, which means I don't break down food even remotely normally. And they were like, oh, you'll be fine. Do you know who had one of the most significant flares of their life because of that? It was me. When you increase your protein, you have got to drink water. Hydration is key to help aid your digestion, and you have to make sure that you're consuming your protein throughout the day so that you're not going to cause yourself issues with constipation and GI, digestive issues. Your protein is the building block of our body. It's where your primary structure, your function comes from. It's what's going to build and repair your muscles. It truly is the essential building block of your enzymes. So that's the catalyst for the processes in our body to work. It also aids with balancing your blood sugar. It helps you slow down the absorption of your carbs. It aids your digestion, and it helps you feel fuller longer. That's why it's so important. It truly is crucial. It's even crucial for the production of your hormones so that your body, your blood, your fluids, everything balances. And you can't go without sources of protein if you're trying to build muscles. The second main micronutrient is your carbs. Yes, you have to eat carbs. No, you should never be eating a whole program without carbs. Carbohydrates literally are the primary source of energy. They are necessary for your immune system. It's the preferred source of fuel. It is needed for your brain, your blood cells. It's what helps your gut microbiome and digestion. That's where your vitamins, minerals are coming from. It's one of those things that you truly need to be incorporating. Obviously, there are different types of carbohydrates, and we'll get into that. We're really talking basics today. But it's where your energy sources come from. You need your carbs. The third main group in your macros is called fat. In your fat, you have the ones that help you absorb fat-soluble vitamins. So it's your vitamin A, D, E, and K. These help with satiety, that sense of fullness. It's a great source of energy for long, low-intensity activities. It helps regulate your digestion. It's also something that helps with the lining of your organs, certain hormones, and it helps build your cell membranes. So you truly need all three in that category to function. Now, when you hear people talking about tracking macros, that just means logging your intake. You can do it online. You can do it by paper. There's so many apps to do it. But if you're considering if you should or shouldn't count macros, counting calories and macros is great for overall tracking. I always tell my clients they should start doing it unless they have some restrictive tendencies with nutrition and eating, because it's such an educational tool. It teaches you how big portions are. It teaches you your baseline assessment of what you need just to function. And then you can adhere your intake to your goals by tracking those three main categories. And so protein, carbs, and fats, they are what compromises the majority of our calories. And so if you're somebody that's looking do I want to track your nutrients? It's one of those things where your macro and your micronutrients, they have to work together, and you need all available nutrients for optimal health. And that's why if you're somebody looking to lose weight or gain muscle or just modify where you're at, all of your energy balances, your intakes, your systems, your organs, you need all three food groups. And what's going to help you the most is finding that balance of that intake. But if you're struggling to get those results and you don't know what you're eating, a good place to start is just by simply teaching yourself how to track your intake. Things that are really helpful if you do decide to count your macros and your calories, food scales. I know it seems crazy and it seems like a lot of effort, but getting results takes effort. Food scales are great because you can get an accurate assessment of how much is in each ingredient. You can find those super simple. I have one linked on my Amazon storefront. You also have food tracking apps. A lot of my clients use MyFitnessPal. These are great because you can get a general assessment of the types of foods you're eating, the portions you're getting. It has a large tracking system. There's another one called Chronometer I've been hearing a lot about, but it's a simple way that can count your food and count your calories for you. When you're doing calculating macros and you're using these traditional calculators, I'm going to use a disclaimer. This is why you need a certified professional, because a lot of these calculators that you'll see are general assessments. Not all of them are created equal, and not all of them can equate and modify to your activity levels. You do have your TDEE calculator, which is one where you are going to enter your gender, age, weight, height, your activity level, your body fat percentage if you know it, and that one will give you your calories and your macros for maintenance, cutting, and bulking. They give you numbers for like moderate, high, low, different types of carbohydrate diets. This one can be on the lower side, to be quite honest, because it doesn't really equate specifically to that person's body type. So if you enter your body fat, it might be a little bit more accurate, but it's not 100% like the be all end all. You've got some other different trackers that you'll see out there if you like Google them, but you have to be really careful that you're getting a sufficient amount of intake. Personally, for me, I use all of the dietetics equations. So I went through nutrition training and I determined my clients' macros by using dietetics equations. A good place to start if you're somebody that's looking to track. I always tell my clients, don't change anything. Give me 5 days of your nutrition. I want to know everything you eat, everything you drink, every snack you have. Track it. That's going to be your baseline number. And that's what's really hard is a lot of people looking to lose weight will be shocked when they see that number, because a lot of people aren't always eating enough, or it's the quality in the foods that they are eating because they're eating where they should be at, but it's the food choices that they're making. And so a good starting point is simply just to utilize something like MyFitnessPal and track where you're at and just see what your baseline intake currently is, because your macro range is unique for you and it has to be specific to your personal goals. I always say when you see somebody on the internet sharing a day in the life or what I eat in a day, it's just guidance. You could eat exactly the same way that person does every single day for a year, and you're never going to look the same because you're two different people with two different genetic makeups. But when you use these calculators, it helps you to kind of get a baseline understanding of where you're at and at least what's in each food. If you're somebody that's looking to start doing something like this, you really have to give yourself grace. This is something that takes a considerable amount of time and effort. And so you really have to go into it knowing that it's the process and the journey, not the end destination. And so I don't change my clients' macros after I give them their baseline assessment until they've adhered. And adherence can take weeks. Some people will adhere in 2 to 3 weeks. Some people take 3 to 4 until you adhere exactly as your program is designed for you. Your coach doesn't know truly what you're doing. And so if there's a lot of variability and you're not consistently hitting the numbers you've been given, we have no way of knowing what your proper intake should be or what the potential is to be in those numbers. And so when you're doing your calculations and figure out your macros, you got to figure out your baseline number, because that baseline current intake and what your numbers should be, if they're drastically different and you jump to where you should be too fast, you're going to tank. So you really have to steadily, if you're going into a deficit, I don't change my clients more than 200 calories. It's a slow, steady progress so you don't tank them. Once you figure out the numbers of calories you need, there's so many ways of doing this, but that's your basal metabolic rate. And then you have to modify for your activity level. You have to figure out your macro breakdown. A good place to start is that 40%, give or take, of your calories is going to come from carbs, 30 from protein, and 30 from fat. That is just a good starting place, and then you adjust it from there. Most people in the dietetics equation say 0.8 to 1.1, sometimes 1.2 is your protein amount for body weight, and that's your per pound body weight or your lean body mass. And then you have to adjust your carbs and fats from there. So once I get my client's baseline assessment, I modify for their activity level. I figure out their protein, their fats, and their carbs. And then I give them the safe ranges to make those numbers make sense that they should stay in. I also give them some leniency because you can't have 142 grams of protein and be on every single day. I give them small ranges and goals to fit in so that they're able to progress over time and have something that's realistic for them, that's not going to feel like they're feeling like a failure from the gate. When you are looking to count macros for fat loss or weight loss, you obviously still need that baseline assessment. Either your caloric deficit comes from your nutrition or it comes from your activity level, but you don't want to have both, because if you have too much of a caloric deficit and too much cardio, you won't even be able to maintain the muscle that you have. And so it's really important to regulate yourself, thinking of things like your thyroid, your metabolism, that if you undereat for too long, there are serious repercussions for those systems, and even your hormones can be unbalanced. And so you really have to take time, like small deficits are 10%, 200 calories, small, simple changes over time to make sure you're still getting enough intake, and then modify it as you see fit or as your coach sees fit over time. But when you're trying to gain muscle, it's totally different because you can't be in a deficit. For the best results to gain muscle, you should be eating a little bit more than what your body currently needs, which is hard for a lot of people. And you have to get in the mindset when you truly commit to this goal is that yes, you'll be in a small surplus. Yes, your weight may go up. But once you build that muscle and you reverse and start leaning out, everything becomes worth it because you see the muscle definition, you have the mass you needed, and then you lean out from there. One of those things that I feel like too often people think is that they're going to put themselves in a deficit and gain muscle. But if you don't modify for your activity level and you're an active person doing 5, 6, 7 days a week of workouts, then you're not going to get as much out of the programming as you should. I feel like one of the hardest areas when counting macros is when you're counting macros and trying to make a recipe. It's super easy if you're just doing chicken, rice, broccoli. But one of the most common questions when tracking macros is making recipes. And so what's great is you can enter recipes into food tracking apps. Most have this feature where you can enter the ingredients, create the recipe, and then it breaks it up by servings. And so you're able to do that for future use as well. Also, tracking macros doesn't require perfection like we talked about. There's variability in it. And so if you make a recipe and you don't make it again, it's one of those things where you're really going to have to estimate if you're not able to put it into the tracking app. This is where it's really helpful to weigh the ingredients individually beforehand, and you can kind of just guesstimate on how much you had based off of the recipe, how many if you did cups, like how many cups of broccoli required for the recipe, and then you portion it out. The last part of this, I feel like that always gets people is how do you count macros when you're eating out? And I'm going to tell you there's 2 answers for this, and that might drive you crazy. The first answer is if you work with me and you are one of my clients, we teach you balance, and you can go out and enjoy yourself and not deter yourself from your goals. That's the honest to God truth. If you are so restrictive that you can't even enjoy yourself, you will always be behind and struggling. When you're eating out, obviously some restaurants have macronutrients listed. Some have the calculators on their website, which is nice, makes it super easy. But for if you're in a restaurant and you're eating a meal, you are going to have to really guesstimate where you're at and adjust the serving size as it seems fit. The tricky part in America, if you're listening to this, is that portions tend to be a lot larger than they should. And so you can break a meal down individually and log it. So you can go over, like if you're eating a bowl at a restaurant, and how many ounces of each portion you had, like ounces of chicken breast, ounces of rice, ounces of sweet potatoes, and then modify for like your oils. That way it's a little bit easier once you've tracked for a while, because you understand what portions look like, and it really is a guesstimation, because it won't always be 100% correct, because you don't always have a restaurant's information for it. But the reality is, if you're doing it and doing it right, you can be able to have your cake, so to speak, and eat it too. One category that gets people, and if you're not somebody tracking this, you'll know exactly why you're not getting results. It's alcohol. Alcohol is its own macronutrient, and it needs to be tracked differently. This is something that you'll have carbs and fats to cover your alcohol. You already learned earlier in this podcast how many calories are in each gram of a macronutrient. What you have to do when you're calculating alcohol is take the calories of the drink and then either divide it by the 4 grams of carbs or the 9 grams of fat. Protein should be prioritized and shouldn't be used to cover drinks. So when you're covering your alcohol and your macronutrients, you're going to cover it under your fats and your carbohydrates. So if you have a drink that has 100 calories and you divide it by 4 grams, that's 25 grams of carbs. Or if you have the 100 grams of calories divided by 9, it's roughly 11 grams of fat. So you are going to have to allocate some to carbs and some to fat to spread it out evenly. So in your food tracking app, you can do like a quick search, and then you'll see the right amount of grams for each type of alcohol. To make it make sense and to make it simple, because that's what nutrition truly should be, you need to plan ahead. When you decide to start tracking macros and tracking your nutrition, it's super important to just think ahead. And so when I'm on my stuff, I go grocery shopping on Friday or Saturday night. I know I might sound like a loser, but I love that no one's at the grocery store, and I get everything I'm going to need for the week. That way I have all the ingredients in my house. I do 2 days of meal prep, not one. But that way it's just easier. I don't feel when I'm going home, I know food is there, so I won't go out to eat. The second thing I do, I personally like to do 2 days of meal prep, Sunday and Wednesday. I don't like my ground turkey dry, so I will do half of my meals for Sunday. I'll do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then I'll meal prep again on Wednesday for Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I always equate 1 or 2 of my dinners on the weekend to eating out. Another thing that's super helpful is just creating grab and go meals. I have a bunch of glass containers that when I'm following a meal plan, I will portion everything out, and I'll have all of my lunches or all of my dinners. I am basic. I eat the same breakfast all week. I eat the same lunch all week, and I do 2 different dinners. When people ask me how to keep nutrition simple, it's what people don't want to hear. You need to eat basic. The more complicated, the more recipes, the more expensive it gets, the harder it gets to follow, and then the more wasteful you are. And so I eat the same breakfast. I do some form of an English muffin, a vegan waffle, a protein waffle. I'll do that paired with dairy-free yogurt and fruit. My lunch is always easy because it's hot as hell here. So I love doing grilled chicken salads for lunch. I'll add crumbled up bacon. I do peppers. I do cucumbers. I do broccoli. I love a micronutrient, microgreen salad with romaine lettuce. And then I always pair it. You could do salmon. You can do chicken. You can do ground up turkey. Super simple. My dinners are always literally as basic as ground turkey taco bowls. I love just pairing grilled chicken. I love the boneless chicken thighs. I love dark meat, paired with mixed vegetables and then a sweet potato or a baked potato, depending on my macros. My snacks are always Honeycrisp apples, prime time for that, with peanut butter and dairy-free chocolate chips because I do like my sweets. I'll do fruit as a snack. If I can't get all of my protein in, that is when I will supplement. Something that I know is really tricky for a lot of people is that everybody thinks I need to drink a protein shake or I need to have a protein bar. And this is coming from me. I love processed things like processed snacks, Gushers, fruit snacks. I freaking love them. But the reality is your main macronutrients should be coming from the food you're eating, and you should only be supplementing if you can't get your main intake from the foods you're eating. And so those things are called supplements, meaning they should aid your nutrition. They should not replace your nutrition. And so I always like to do fresh fruit. I have rice cakes. I have some like nutrient bars, like natural bars. I'll pair just because they're easy on the go. And then I love carrots and hummus. And so I personally do a serving and a half of protein at all of my main meals, and then another half protein at one of my snacks. That way it breaks up my protein intake throughout the day for my digestion issues. And then I pair all of my meals with a carb and a fat at every single main meal. That way it's a lot easier to get the intake in. When you're trying to decide what is going to be best for you, the pros of doing something like a tracking system is that you're going to properly learn how to fuel your body. You're going to learn portions. You're going to understand intake. It'll improve your overall quality of your intake drastically. It's going to show you how to balance out your energy systems. You'll feel your body balancing out. You even see some changes in those hormones. And then you'll really teach yourself how to have a balanced plate and why all of the food groups are truly a necessity. I personally think once you've got macro tracking down, it's what enables what I call food freedom, because you'll realize that there's actually no food that's off limits. Anything can fit in your macros, and that can be a positive or a negative. But you don't have to negate your favorite food groups just because you're trying to lose weight or build muscle. You just have to make sure you plan ahead and change your macros to personally fit everything that you want to put into your day, but making sure those main meals are nutrient dense. The difficult things when it comes to tracking, it's restrictive. If you're counting macros, it can feel very overwhelming and restrictive. The second thing is it's super time consuming, but the reality is we make time for everything. Hair, nails, going out with friends, drinking on the weekend. It's not that we don't have the time, it's that we need to prioritize our time. Now, I can say this as a negative, and it's something I personally have worked through. If you have disordered eating patterns, thoughts, behaviors, this is something to consult a medical doctor first, because it can be very triggered if you have disordered thought patterns and eatings, because you can feel those restrictive tendencies. But the biggest con is that sometimes that concept of if it fits mentality can go a little awry. There are no foods that are off limits. All food is good food. Foods just have different nutrient density and value. You don't want to be overly consuming processed goods just because it quote unquote fits with your macros. And so the overall goal when you're trying to figure out the basics of nutrition is that it's to teach you, it's to help you, it's not forever. It's something that you can utilize as a tool and then progress away from over time, but you don't have to track macros the rest of your life, nor should you have to track macros the rest of your life. When it comes down to it, the biggest thing you can do and the biggest mistake you could make is overcomplicate it. Keep things simple, limit your processed goods, eat quality nutrient-dense meals. Make sure that you maintain that protein intake so you get that satiety, that fullness feeling. Find the balance while enjoying yourself, and make sure you hydrate throughout the day. You'll be so shocked once you figure out that balance intake you need to fuel your workouts, and you'll notice drastic changes in your overall health. If you guys need any help, I am one of the online health and fitness coaches for Broad Track Breakthrough, so I can help you with your nutrition, with your workouts. Everything is done online. It's super easy. And then if you're in person in Tampa, you can come train with me at Body Fit Training Tampa and get the same experience in person. But if you're looking for assistance, feel free to DM me at Gina Marie Fit, or you can email me at ginamariefit@gmail.com if you're looking for online health and fitness help. All right, y'all, I hope it was helpful. As always, stay tuned and we will chat soon.